One of the questions that I most get asked when working with teachers, working with campuses is how do you get students to remember all the social studies content we taught them? I got you. Welcome back, teacher homies. If you're new to this corner of the internet, hi, I'm Cecilia Tamez, and I'm a social studies instructional strategist, and I help passionate history teachers feel competent and confident while facilitating student-centered learning. Now, the first thing you need to do to get students to remember what you taught them is teach in a memorable way. So let's talk a little bit about what this entails. Okay, if you're a little on the vintage side, you know that when we were going to school, when we were growing up, and even, as far back as a couple years ago, you may have heard, administrators or your instructional strategists at your campus try to discourage you from using videos in your instruction. But let's do some real talk, you and I. Think of the generation of students we teach today. Okay, there's a reason why social media, video platforms have literally taken off. We are working with a primarily visual generation. As facilitators of the learning experience, we need to work with our students. Now, I know there might be a couple folks who watch this video and they're gonna be like,
well, good luck in college, or, they need to learn how to learn in different ways, or they need to know how to read a textbook.
And I'm totally down with that idea. I understand that that is something that we may have to do. We want to make sure that we're not so married to our ideas simply because that's the way that we're comfortable with. Our mission as facilitators of student-centered learning, which is what this channel is all about, is having the insight, developing the experience, and the skill to be able to accommodate the learning experience to the audience that we're teaching. So that being said, there's a couple of ways that you can help make your lesson memorable, and that is by including visuals. And I'm talking visuals in everything, as much as you can. And this is because, remember, we teach different student populations. We teach English language learners. We teach special education students. Now, disclaimer before y'all come at me, this is not to be dismissive of other learning styles. We can incorporate everything, but we want to make sure that we do not neglect these visuals in order for our lessons to be memorable. Scaffolds is another way to make your lessons memorable. When you support students in creating their own understanding about what they're learning, they're more likely to remember it because they had to do the processing and the assimilating with your support with those scaffolds. Repetition, obviously, is another way to make things memorable. You see it time and time and time and time again, eventually it's gonna stick. And of course, this doesn't mean, we're gonna have them reciting history vocabulary words like a litany or something like that. It just means that you are finding creative ways to continue to embed that same content over and over and over again, so these lessons and this information can be memorable. We talk a lot about gamification on this channel, and that is because it works, my people. Gamification is a fun, engaging way that you can make your history content more memorable and therefore better retained by your students. Now, you've also heard me mention the benefits of using non-history example. If you've not watched my other videos, in a nutshell, what I'm basically sharing is that psychology shows us that in order for people to bridge their understanding with something that they're not familiar with, they need that unknown to be related to an experience that is known to them. So let's say, for example, that you were a person who's never put their hand in fire, but you have touched hot pavement, or as a child, you have put your feet on hot pavement and you know it burns. So even though you've never touched fire, if you make these associations with non-history examples, then you can say, okay, you know how you've experienced this? Okay, well, something similar happened with this, or this social studies vocabulary word is something similar to that. Now, I've also talked about teaching history in an interesting way, in a memorable way, through storytelling. If you think about it, some of our earliest historical records are literally oral histories. These are stories that have been remembered generation through generation. So what does that tell us? That humans have a natural tendency to remember stories. Why? Because we have an emotional response to it, and they're usually something that is familiar and that is relevant. So that's another powerful way to make your history lesson memorable and therefore get it to stick for your students. Now, a little caveat, Teaching that is effective requires effective planning and preparation. And this is just so that your content flows seamlessly, so that you're not jumping around from topic to topic without some sort of sequence that your students can understand and follow along with you in the most simplest way. And this is true for you even if you are teaching a thematic history course. Now, a while back, I did create a video about how to organize your social studies course, whether it be a chronological history course or a thematic history course, just so that you can maximize comprehension and understanding. And if you missed that video, you already know I got you. And I'll go ahead and link that up above and down below in the description for you to watch at the end of this video. Now, on that note, because I know this is easier said than done, if you're a new teacher and you have been struggling with getting your lessons to make sense, to build, to be effective, then I invite you to explore the possibility of having me as your mentor this next academic school year. My sole focus is ensuring that you have that personalized attention when you need it. If you're interested in my personalized mentorship program, Teach Like an Influencer Academy, peep the link below and let's make this the best year yet. The second thing you need to do to get students to remember what you taught them in your history class is to use body kinesthetic cues. So let's talk a little bit about that. Although some of these cues are definitely visual, they involve movement, kind of like muscle memory. So think back to when you're learning how to drive. At first, there was a lot of thinking involved, right? You actually had to remember. Now, as time goes on, your body just naturally remembers, and you know how much pressure to put on the gas pedal, on the brake and all that. It becomes muscle memory. As a scaffold to support our students in remembering and retaining our social studies lessons, there is nothing better than some cues to help trigger that retrieval of knowledge. So let me show you what I mean. So this was actually a gift from one of my students, but I kept it all this time because I was like, body kinesthetic cue, okay? So when we talk about religious dissenters in colonial America, one of the terms, one of the historical figures my students needed to know was Thomas Hooker, Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. So when it was time to review this, or when we were playing a review game, or during instruction, any occasion I had, which means I had to keep my little hook handy, I would say, all right, folks, who was the person who came up with the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, right? Because the hook makes the letter C. So anytime they'd see me trace the letter C on the hook, that was a visual cue of, oh, you know, Thomas Hooker, right? Hook. And then Connecticut, the C in the hook. So just that tracing motion, that body kinesthetic cue would help my students retrieve that social studies information. And it doesn't have to be an actual object or item. It can be a movement, it can be a chant, it can be a rhyme, it can be a song, it can be hand signals. I do know that a lot of teachers use hand signals to teach the Bill of Rights, for example. That's something that I definitely did and can confirm works. So do not neglect on incorporating body kinesthetic cues. Now, the third thing you need to do to get students to remember your social studies lessons is loop the content. That means review and repeat. Now, I don't know if y'all know this. I don't think I've ever revealed this on my channel, but I practiced martial arts for about 2 years. And my karate teacher used to say there are 1,000 ways to practice the same step without making it monotonous or boring. And let me tell you, my sensei was right. That's literally the challenge. That's literally the thing that we need to do every day. Find creative ways to embed and engage students into reviewing what they've learned while moving ahead with the content. Now I know what you're thinking.
Girl, I barely have time to cover the content.
You want me to have time to review? Like, where am I supposed to loop that review in there? Now, I do have a more detailed video that talks about how you can review for state assessments, for final exams, while you push forward with the content. And I'm gonna pull through by linking the video up above and down below for you to watch after you're done with this video. But essentially, being able to have the time to loop content basically boils down to how you allot your instructional time. And this just means intentionally planning how you're going to use instructional time based on your student needs so that you actually, dare I say it, force yourself to create pockets of time for the things that are really important to review. And so some great places where I've been able to create additional pockets of review to keep looping that content, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm using a body kinesthetic cue. You're gonna remember loop, is during bell work, during class activities, during door trivia, entrance ticket, exit ticket, or perhaps on designated days of the week. Now, obviously, this needs to be planned for and executed throughout the year. And again, the video I mentioned will help you with getting some ideas for how to plan and prep for this. However, if you want more details about tips for reviewing social studies content, you can comment below, golden ticket. Now remember, I read all your comments. I want to hear what you want to see on this channel, and I can't wait to make video content for you on that topic. Now, it's very important that when we're reviewing and looping this content, we keep it purposeful, because I say this with some tough love, but if you are reviewing and doing all these engaging, history games and activities, but it's over content that your students already know, your students are going to shut down. They're going to be like, this is boring. I already know this. They're not being challenged. And I don't want you to think that, certain games or certain activities don't work. It's just, you need to know what your students need to know. So I've said this before, looking at data is not fun. But even if you're not a fan of looking at numbers, I highly advise that if you want to be intentional with looping content so that you ensure that students are retaining the social studies content you're teaching them, and so that you know what content they're retaining, you want to make sure that you are assessing your students regularly. These can be formative assessments, summative assessments, it could be verbal, it could be it doesn't matter. As long as you have an idea, either through observation or whatever method you choose to assess your students, you want to make sure you have an idea and a method of checking what students have actually retained and what we want to go back and review. I know some teachers also shy away from consistent assessments because it's a drag to grade quizzes and little things like that. So if that's what's holding you back from consistently assessing your students, don't forget that there are self-grading sheets, programs, applications that can help you get a quick idea of where your students are at. Earlier, I mentioned that I have a video about how you can review and how you can fill learning gaps even as you push forward with your curriculum. And I cannot recommend that video enough, because you can do all the things to help your students retain your social studies lessons. And yes, they'll retain what you taught them this year and what you've been teaching them, but if your students are coming to you with gaps in their background knowledge, then there's going to be a disconnect. And you're going to see that they might have more of a challenge contextualizing things. So please watch that video after you finish watching this one. Now, I talked to you about the importance of preparing and planning to implement these routines, these consistent routines in your classroom. And the thing is, we don't always have the time to do this. Actually, we never have the time to do this. I don't want you to overwhelm yourself making everything from scratch like I had to do when I first started teaching. So if you need any ready-made activities for your classroom to help your students retain that social studies information, the link to my website is down below so that you can get back to focusing on the most important part of your classroom, and that is you, the facilitator, and your health. So I want to make sure that you're taken care of. Now, if you found this video helpful and want to help me help other teachers, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a teacher friend. I got your back. I'm rooting for you. Until next time, class dismissed.